Oh man.
That doesn't get old.
No.
So awesome. Shout out to Josh Murray, my father, for the filming of that intro once again. Anybody that comes to check this out live, let us know. How does it sound? Are we too loud? Anything. Open to suggestions. Obviously, we want the best quality audio and video as possible. So with that said, what are we going to talk about? I guess we'll start just by, we didn't meet this last Wednesday as we normally do for Bible study. So, how was your week?
I was telling Kronk earlier, it was like every day this week I felt like I was getting like kicked in the back of the knees about 3 or 4 times a day
By a
work.
small
It
child?
was just like no. Well, that too, but he doesn't help anything. No, work was it was just a rough week. I mean, not like terrible, but just taking losses left and right. You know.
Just like under a lot of schedule pressure and stuff like that?
No, just like little tiny problems that should be problems, but they were just like,
Yeah.
you know, you're working along, you get an email, and you're like, oh, here goes the next 30 minutes. So you pop over, do that, and then 2 hours later, it's like another thing comes in, and then
Yeah.
people are
like I was-
annoying and
Like I was telling you before the stream started, it was kind of similar for me today. No, not kind of, exactly similar for me today. And by no means am I going to pretend like I'm under the mental strain that you are. However, it's different, but I will say that so I had 4 runs to do today. For all who don't know, I'm a delivery driver for a construction company, so I deliver materials to job sites all day and organize our shop, and I have a lot of responsibility. And I had 4 places to go today, but the first 3 places I went, they all needed it at the exact same time, and I'm not God, so I can't be 3 places at one time. And so trying to coordinate all that in my head, but the problem is while I already have a set list of 4 things that I have to get done, people are calling me with new ones that I have to cipher. Okay, who do I want to make mad the least?
Yeah.
Like, who do I prioritize?
who's the most important?
So one of our foremen will call me and he'll be like, "Hey, I need this," and I always have to ask, "Okay, today?" Or
Now?
tomorrow, or and most of the time they all act like a tornado is coming. We're all gonna die if I don't get this.
Yeah.
So just trying to prioritize who, and no matter who I pick, the other guy's mad. So whatever. But yeah, I'm ecstatic to have my job. It's the first. I tell people, and my dad gets offended by it, but he shouldn't, because it's not necessarily what I mean. Whenever I say it's the first job that I've ever had that I actually like, like he's always like, "Ouch," because we used to work together.
Yeah.
But when I say that, it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with the kind of work.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gifted mechanically. I'm not gifted hands-on. I'm not good at building things, and I'm not an artist in any fashion. So the type of work I've done in the past just hasn't worked with my giftings.
Yeah.
But this one is probably the closest to what I'm just naturally good at, and so that's why I enjoy it.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah. So how has Ezra been sleeping better? Like last week you mentioned he stopped breathing during his sleep. Like, has he been back to the doctor? What's the update?
Yeah, we had a checkup, like his 9-month checkup Tuesday, and she thinks it was just like congestion from being sick and stuff, because he had a cold and whatever. And yeah, he's been doing better. We've actually been getting sleep this week,
Nice.
which
Praise
is fantastic.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like
Last week was
Katrina
bad.
was, I could see it in your wife's eyes. I could see, she was just like, we got together to
Yeah.
celebrate Dalen's graduation. And she just was just, just looked at me like a
Yeah.
zombie. And I'm like, oh dear.
Well, she
And
fell asleep when she was putting Ezra to sleep on
yeah,
accident
poor
inside,
thing.
which, yeah.
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 So, but he's still doing it somewhat or not.
Very, very
Minimal.
little now
Okay.
compared to what it was the last couple weeks. So, yeah.
Thank God.
I know. He's doing a lot better the last 4 or 5 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And with that, like for all who don't know, we have our third baby coming. I didn't want to announce it on the last live stream. It was taking everything I could to contain myself
Yeah.
because our last live stream I had known for like 4 days or something like that. But we were waiting to tell our immediate family, like we were waiting to tell you and Trina at
Yeah,
Dalen's
yeah.
thing before we announced it to the public. But yeah, it's been great so far. So far, it's probably been the most difficult early stage pregnancy that we've had so far. With our oldest, there was like really, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure she'll be in the chat like a lightning
Yeah,
bolt
like,
correcting
"You don't
me if
remember this."
if I misrepresent. But to my knowledge and to how we've spoken about it before, a lot of women talk about nausea and morning sickness and all this, and she honestly has pretty mild pregnancies, especially early on. This one has been more aggressive. She's complained multiple times about being nauseous and all sorts of things, and that never really happened with our 2 boys,
Yeah.
which, kind of the wives' tale goes, well, if you have different symptoms during your pregnancy, it could be that it's a different sex. So could be we have 2 boys so far, so maybe it's a girl. So
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, we don't know. But yeah, excited. I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out what I'm going to do for a third bedroom. We're probably going to end up moving our oldest down here to the basement. There's a bedroom over there that we're probably gonna move him down here because he'll be almost 4
Yeah, he'll be
when
yeah.
the baby gets here. I'll have to put a door up by the stairs, but that's no problem. Well, yeah, it's not gonna be easy. There's nothing there, but anyway, we'll figure it out. But yeah, I'm just in the middle of all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just typical life stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So one thing we wanted to talk about was how each of us personally, individually came to know Jesus. So the problem is with this area, and especially exclusively to me at least, is when I tell a story, or honestly when I talk in general, I am like, this, but I am like the most detailed explanative person. So I'm worried that I could fill this this entire live stream just telling my story.
Yeah.
So when I get started, like, don't be afraid to stop me and be like, okay, like this is the 73rd rabbit trail. Let's get back on to, I just have a bad habit of explaining every detail about everything, which is funny because I think it's like an overcorrection of my sister, because my sister struggled her whole life with not making any sense when she tells stories.
Yeah.
Because she'll like start in the middle and then go back and try to explain what she meant in the beginning, and you're lost. So it's almost like I'm the opposite of that. So why don't we start with you? How did you, Jesus in John chapter 3 says you must be born again to enter the kingdom of God. We're born once through water in the natural world. We're born of woman. But as the Bible teaches, we are in our fallen state. We are in Adam until we are redeemed and forgiven by Christ. So point to the moment when you know that you were born of the Spirit, born again, and what did that look like for you, and how were you changed, and just go for it.
Yeah, I was raised in a very good Christian household. Awesome parents, everything. And kind of typical, went to college, fell away from going to church, fell away from Christ, all that. And just living a, typical reckless lifestyle. And then I graduated in, 2021. And about that time, my roommate at the time, which I'd been roommate for 5 years with him through college, and he's still one of my best friends. Him and his wife really became strong followers at that time. And so like it kind of like brought me back down to earth, like I needed like reevaluate my life.
This is why
basically.
you were still in college?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And like I could see God working in them, and like obviously like how people look at us is how I looked at them, you know. And then after graduation, Katrina and I started just reading our Bibles more and living a little bit better. And then I still remember it was some time like June or July. We were sitting there and she mentioned that passage about how Jesus either wants all of you or none of you. And like,
I know exactly
yeah,
what it is.
it's like,
if I remember right, it's Revelation chapter 3, verse 21. Let me see.
yeah. That was like, whoa.
Yeah, very,
Because like,
it's like that
you realize
loud
like, okay, well, like I'm
not.
not all. So like,
Yeah.
I'm nothing right now.
It's the exact same passage. Maybe not the same passage, but the same same idea, same concept that actually opened
Yeah.
Kelsey's eyes.
Yeah. And I thank God for Katrina all the time, because really she's what he drew me into him through her, you know. And her strength at first is what kind of like brought us both into Christ. So that's like a shortened down version. There was more things in there, but really since then,
So did you have like a moment, like for example, if someone asked you what was the thing that brought you back, convicted you, the Spirit worked in you, convicted you, what was the thing, the moment? Like, do you have something like that you can always point to that was like a aha? I do, for sure.
yeah, I know it was that moment. We were literally laying in bed and she told me that. And like, I remember the entire conversation, which has been 2 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
perfect. I remember the entire thing. That was like the moment. And then we got married shortly after that, and then we started our Bible study in like November-ish, October-ish of that year. Still going on year and a half-ish later.
I think it was it was the week after you guys got back from your honeymoon.
Yeah.
Is when we started it.
Yep. So yeah, that's like a basic rundown of my testimony.
So-
nothing like super crazy, but
Yeah.
like,
Well, I mean,
anytime someone comes to Christ, it's obviously,
I know what you
a
mean.
miracle.
So what would you say are some things that you notice, like, because one thing is, oh yeah, that's, bear with us, folks. Technological issue here.
Oops.
Yeah, the camera just died. You can keep talking if you want.
I'm assuming you were going to say something along the lines of like, how did I notice change in my life?
Yes.
Yeah. I would say at first it was like slowing down my lifestyle. Things used to be really fast, I think at that time, right after I graduated, and for 6 or 7 months after that, I had a job up at the airport, and I was working like 6 days a week. I was wearing like 610s for like 6 months straight, and on top of that, like we were going out and partying and hanging out with people constantly, and just like
Yep.
fast, you know. So that was like the first thing, was like slowing down and like taking more control of our lives. And then after that, it was like how you present yourself, you know, like you have a reason now to present yourself as a good person, and not just trying to make people think you're a good person, you know, like you need to show yourself as Christ. So, you know, presenting yourself better. I always think looking better in public is a good thing to do, and not looking, I don't want to say trashy is not the word, but like just kind of putting yourself together.
Representing.
Yeah.
Yeah, representing him.
And that's through like, and you know, I don't want to say like I dress nice ever, but not dressing poorly, or like not cussing, stop cussing pretty quickly, all that kind of stuff.
But you would say, though, to be clear, like, because I know exactly what you mean, but like some people could perceive like what we're saying as like a religious duty, and that's not what Wade's talking about. Like, for example, he's not just merely not cussing, like trying his hardest not to cuss and dressing nicer and improving his behavior on purpose as like this fake religious facade. What he's
it's
saying
not the
is
shell, it's from
an
within.
internal transformation that's happened to him.
Yeah.
To where now his mind has actually been transformed to care how he represents his creator. You know, I would,
to where it's not like you're trying to put off this image, but
right.
you're,
It's
like,
not like the
it's
Pharisee
more like
attitude.
a want or a need, a desire to do those things.
You once did not have a desire to please God or to know God, and now, like that, he has reignited your spirit, the part of you that has relationship to your creator, and now you have a actual real desire to please him. I was just wanting to make that clarification, because the Pharisees, they wanted to dress nice. They wanted to put on a facade, like I talk nice, I look nice, I pray more than you, but it's fake.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the transformation that comes from the Holy Spirit is genuine. Were you done there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then I'd say, we quit drinking altogether, basically, and then just like little things, and now it's like you get to a point to where you learn to hate your sin.
Yes.
And then you constantly try to improve anything you notice, and you constantly ask him to show you things that you need to improve on. And I think once you reach that point, it makes you, I mean, it feels better, because you're like, okay, now like I'm really diving in deep to like be better, you know,
kind
and
of
be
like
more Christ-like, you know.
Excuse me, David mentality.
Yeah.
You know, a man after God's own heart.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it gives us so much hope for the grace of God as well. You know, we call David a man after God's own heart. We call him, you know, one of the names for Jesus, the Messiah, is the son of David. Well, that's elevating David to a pretty high standard.
Yeah.
And he's a murderer, an adulterer,
Yep.
a liar.
Yep.
You know, and so that gives hope to the rest of us that are covered by the blood. Is, you know, God can call someone a murderer, an adulterer, and at the same time a man after God's own heart. Now, that is not to excuse the murder, the adulterous behavior, because those are sinful and they separate us from God. It's just to say that if you're in Christ, if your sins have been cleansed by his blood, and you are obedient to him, that grace really does abound. He's not going to lord your guilt over you for the rest of your life, and you are given his righteousness from living a perfect life. So when God looks at you, he sees Jesus, and when he looks at Jesus, he sees your sin.
Yeah.
It's a swap. So beautiful.
Yeah.
The
And-
passage that you were referring to, I think, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say, like, one more thing. I'd say, like, further down the road, it's turned into not just because a long time I was like trying to write myself, you know, but it's more so like,
What do you mean by that?
like write my sin and become more Christ-like,
gotcha.
you know,
like works
yes,
mentality.
yeah. And then I think you know, it's starting to transform much more into I need to spread the word instead of just working on myself, because that's what he asked us to do. Create disciples.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like you started that way much sooner than I did personally.
Oh, I have that battle literally all the time,
Yeah.
because I think what you're saying is like I'll find myself using my lack of knowledge, goodness, or obedience to Christ as an excuse not to go do our mission. So, like, for example, I'll think to myself, that homeless guy over there has no hope. I can see that. And he thinks that sorry, I am like burping so much because of this carbonated waters, and the sensitivity on the mics is too loud. So I'm like, anyway, so like an example like that where I will feel prompted by him to go share hope with somebody, to go pray for somebody, but I will immediately chicken out, use my own insecurity or my own excuse. Like, let's say I'm driving down the road and there's a guy on the side of the road who's holding up a sign that says, "The only hope I have is if you give me a quarter," you know? Well, I claim to be a follower of a worldview that contradicts that sign and has the potential and the ability to give him hope, life, everlasting. And so I immediately am like, man, he needs to hear the gospel. But then I'll immediately hear my flesh. I'll hear the enemy say, but are you educated enough to go tell people this yet? Even though you logically know it's nothing, it's not about intellect.
Yeah,
you know, a 14-year-old boy filled with the Holy Spirit can demolish a 50-year apologist of the wrong belief system. It's not about intellect, but you make those excuses to get yourself out of it. And I find myself losing that battle every day. So I feel you there. That so the passage I believe you were talking about that kind of God used to open Katrina's eyes, and when she read it to you, kind of like really made headway with you. It's funny, he must use it a lot because it's the same concept that he used for my wife. That is Revelation chapter 3, verse 15. And the context here is he's talking to the church at Laodicea, but it applies to any believer. But he is talking in context directly to the church at Laodicea. He says, I know your works. This is Jesus speaking. I know your works. You aren't cold or hot. I would rather you be cold or hot. But because you're lukewarm and not hot or cold, I'll vomit you out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
So there's this thing that Jesus absolutely hates, and that is a foggy mind. It's a pretending neutral in a position or in a worldview. He hates the concept of neutrality because he's actually, like, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but he's actually giving credit to the consistent sinner over the inconsistent self-proclaimed believer. So he says, I wish you were cold, meaning completely away from me, out of me 100%, or hot, all the way committed, diving both, head 1st into my deep end. But because you're sitting there and you're fumbling around and you won't choose sin, or you won't dive head first all into me, I'm going to vomit you out of it. Disgusts me. He's like saying, at least the ice cold unbeliever is diving head first away from me.
Yeah.
So at least they have the guts to run as far away as fast as possible from me. It's not going to get him anywhere, but at least they have the manhood, the dignity to act like they believe what they believe.
Yeah.
So he's giving more credit to, say, a Jeffrey Dahmer than he is someone who wears a Jesus T-shirt and doesn't do what he says.
To what we used to be.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would give more credit to a Jeffrey Dahmer than he would me 3 years ago. Not that I was doing as wicked things as Jeffrey, but at least Jeffrey was consistent. At least he was like, "There's no God, so why wouldn't I be consistent? Why is life valuable? There is no God." He said this in one of his interviews. Since there's no creator, there's no value, so why wouldn't I do what I want with human life? That's consistent. At least he's consistent. You see? And so that's a pretty bold statement. And it's very convicting as well. So praise God. He used that to open your eyes. So going on to my story, my wife, it was that same concept. I don't know if that verse was told when he opened her eyes, but the same kind of concept. He used fear to draw her into his arms. And a lot of people think, we have all these songs about fear being a bad thing. And in general, fear from the wrong place, fear from Satan, fear from the world, fear from sin are all bad things. But fear from God is your friend, not your enemy. Say, for example, that somebody is just wasted drunk at night and they're stumbling, and we're in Colorado somewhere, and they stumble so far, and it's like 2:30 in the morning, and they stumble to the edge of the cliff. Well, the fear of falling off the edge of that cliff will cause him to back up into safety. So right there, fear is actually his best friend and the only thing that can save him. If fear wasn't present, he would not know to back up into safety, and he would fall and die. So fear, when it comes from righteousness, fear when it comes from warning to stay away from danger, is your best friend.
Yeah.
So that's the tactic he used with you guys, and it's just amazing to see how he can do whatever he wants to open the eyes of an unbeliever. And the thing that he used with me was the love of Christ. I had never seen it before. The way that I had seen it in my wife. So my wife came to know Jesus, and it was like a bolt of lightning. I had a bad taste in my mouth from all church experience, all church people, from the way I grew up. Just kind of had a foggy mindset of what that even meant and what that entails. And so we woke up, one morning, and it was October of 20. So I was 23. No, I was 22. Yeah. And we had actually, the night before, we had stayed up drinking, and I'm sure I was smoking weed, the whole 9 yards, and everything under the sun. And I woke up hungover. I can't remember if she drank the night before or not, but I woke up, and I see her getting dressed and like putting nicer clothes on. I'm like, what? I'm like, it's Sunday. Like, this is when we like make pancakes and do nothing and just, like, what are you getting all ready for? It kind of ticked me off because everything's about me, And I'm like, oh, we're supposed to be lazy today, and do nothing. And by do nothing, I mean whatever I want.
Yeah.
And so I see her getting dressed, and I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I think I'm going to go to church. I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to go to that church in Adrian. And I actually didn't even know that that the Lord had put that fear into her. It was actually from a TikTok. She was scrolling on TikTok and she saw this like early 20s guy, this preaching about the dangers of lukewarm Christianity and to evaluate yourself, and that Christ isn't going to say hello hunky dory welcome in to everybody just because they say they believe. And so using that fear, her eyes got this big around, but I didn't know any of that happened. So I just see her wake up. She's like, I'm going to church. I'm like, I'm not going. And she's like, I didn't say you had to. And Waylon was just a baby. He was 6-8 months old. So she took our first to church with her, and I'm just like, I'm still in what the heck mode. I can't even remember what I did while she was gone. She came back, told me how awesome it was. She told me that she has never in her life experienced nicer people. She said that when she walked through the door, she could feel a goodness, like not like from those people, but like a actual tangible, invisible curtain of a feeling of goodness when she opened the door, if that makes any sense. And she's telling me about all this, and I'm acting intrigued, but I'm just rolling my eyes in the back of my head. And because of self-deception and my love for sin and hatred of God. And so she keeps going for about a month. She's gone every Sunday. But now she's not only gone every Sunday, she's gone every Wednesday night. She's going to Bible studies. So it's taking away from me. It's taking time from me seeing my wife when I get home from work or whatever. Because I'm God. I'm my own God. Give me my wife.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, she's telling me all these things that I don't care about, and I love my sin, so I'm just, suppressing what she's telling me. And then, and this is what's crazy is, I should also throw in there is I had a church background, like I said, and I went to Christian school from the time I was in first grade to the time I was in fifth grade. No. Well, yeah. And then public school, sixth grade, back to private school, seventh grade. So I had a biblical foundation in the sense that I was around people that professed faith. And yet not one time at any point do I at least recall hearing the biblical gospel in its truth and fullness. Not one time. I had heard 30 billion times that Jesus died for your sins. And that was about it. Like, why? What does that mean? What did that accomplish? Why did I need him to do that? Hey, Jesus died for your sins. It's like, that's not enough information. Like, who is he? Why should I believe him? What sins? Why are they bad? How, no one had gone through the entire biblical gospel with me. And so, didn't even need it. All I needed was, in that moment, was the real living love of Christ, that self-sacrificial, diving in head first, no matter the cost, to save your enemy. Not your friend, your enemy. And I witnessed that from my wife after she had been going to church for a few months. And at this point, she had been baptized. No, this was the week she was getting baptized. No, correction. Sorry. It was some weeks before. I don't know why I'm trying to remember in detail. Something from 3 years ago. But anyway, and this is when just the light bulb turned on, and it just kind of was a knife through my heart. And we were actually kind of in a heated discussion about God and everything. I was just totally, hostile to it. And she said, I just really, really wish you'd come to church with me so you could see what I was talking about. These church people, she said, aren't like the church people you talked about from how you grew up and all that. And I'm just like, whatever. I like whiskey. Shut up. And so I said, I'll tell you what. Just to end this conversation, just to get you to stop bugging me. I will go to church, but here's what I'm going to do to prove to you that they will make wrong judgments, bad first impressions of me, and that they won't talk to me, and that they're just like the same church people I've been telling you about that I've always known. I said, I'm going to wear a sleeveless shirt. I'm going to make sure that I put the brightest earrings in. I have my ears pierced. I'm going to just go all out. I'm going to wear my Slipknot t-shirt because I'm a huge heavy metal fan. Still am. And I'm like, I am going to do everything I can to exclaim what they aren't. Mm-hmm. To get them to treat me how they would someone that they aren't, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So that you'll believe that all church people are like this. Anybody not like them, they hate, they won't talk to. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. Wanting it to provoke some sort of argument. Wanting it because I just like to fight, you know. And I just wanted to, just wanted to upset her, as sinister as that is. And her response was, that is fine with me. You can wear whatever you want. I just really want you there. I've never, ever, ever, ever heard anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what that says is I'm willing to transgress how much you're going to embarrass me going into church looking like that. I'm willing to transgress that. I'm willing to look over that. I'm willing to ignore that you're trying to hurt me. I'm willing to put that aside. I'm willing to completely just blindfold myself of your visceral hatred right now because I so deeply want you to know the God that transformed me. So I don't care how you look. I don't care how you talk to me. Look however you want. Please just come. And I literally, like that. I was just like, I can't remember if I responded immediately, but that, when she said that, it was so simple, but that is the love of Christ. Mm-hmm. I don't care, you know, I don't care about my reputation, how I look. I care about saving your soul, you know?
Yeah.
And right there, I specifically remember having a thought in my head. This woman loves Jesus more than she loves me. And now I was starting to look at Jesus as a threat. And I started to have the mentality, if I don't give everything into Jesus like she has been, she'll leave me for him. Mm-hmm. I saw something in her that was like, it's not a choice. This is not a hobby. He has changed my very nature, you know? And so I remember coming to this epiphany, like, she's going to flat out leave me if I don't dive head first and at least try, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, but the love she showed me kind of gave me no choice. It, like, when she showed me that love, it actually made me want to not be myself.
Yeah.
And that is why 1 Corinthians chapter 13 says love never fails. Is because even if your self-sacrificial love doesn't, quote, win the person over, it still didn't fail because it's the moral, absolute greatest thing you can do. Mm-hmm. So even if, even if in that moment I would have said, nope, sorry, that's sweet, it still didn't fail. She succeeded. Christ extended his love toward me. I failed.
Yeah.
Love can't fail. It is the best apologetic. And so that happened. Needless to say, I went to church that one time, and I have not, I think maybe one time since then, I have cried like that. The conviction of the Holy Spirit when I went in there, it was like a sword went all the way through my heart. Mm-hmm. It was like the pastor was only speaking to me and no other human being was in there. It's like he was reading my thoughts. It's like every sin that was in the back of my mind, he was exposing. He was explaining. And every question I had in the back of my mind that I was like, yeah, but what about this? 5 seconds later, he would be like, oh yeah, and this, here's the answer.
Yeah.
It was so creepy and so supernatural that it was like an immediate, I know this is right.
Yeah.
I know, you know what I mean?
There's something here. Yeah.
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 And to be clear, everyone knows. Just to be clear, everyone knows. It's just a matter of you're either suppressing the truth or because of the Holy Spirit, you love the truth.
Yeah.
It's never that you don't have the truth. And so, so from that point forward, I just went into a deep dive seeking of God, everything that is the truth. I wanted to know this book in its fullness. I wanted to know why I can trust it. I wanted to know its historicity. I wanted to compare it with other worldview claims. I wanted to do all of that. I got into the everything, the deepest, darkest pit of it. And yeah, I just through that, the Lord started changing me, and I am not even the same human being that I used to be.
Yeah.
I went from every other word being the F word to if I were to say that word, I would get goosebumps.
Yeah, you
go
feel
up
awful.
my spine.
Yeah.
I went from drinking 6 to 8 beers every single night to I'm lucky if I can get 6 or 8 beers down in a month. Mm-hmm. Just, on a Saturday or whatever, weed eating, and I'll drink a beer, and that's it. I haven't had a sip of hard liquor in 3 years. I haven't had nicotine in 3 years. That story was amazing. That was the first time I actually had the Holy Spirit speak to me, like in a personal way, like through my conscience, through my mind. I was in the bathroom at my old job. I used to work at a Top Golf, which is like a bar, restaurant, entertainment, golf place, for those that don't know. And I went into the restroom. I used to go in the restroom, turn on the vent fan, and vape. So I went in there to do that. And right when I put it to my mouth, this is in the middle of all the seeking and the digging, and the Lord was starting to carve my heart and transform me. And I explicitly, and I had never read this concept. I had never read this parable from Jesus. And I when I went to get the vape and put it to my lips, I heard him say, "You cannot be my slave because you're already a slave to this." Mm-hmm. So it's the concept Paul talks about, which again I had never read at this point. It's the concept that he says, I don't allow myself to be mastered by anything except Jesus. Not a food addiction, not cigarettes, not an alcohol addiction. Like, you are to submit your life to me because I gave it all to you. That's Christianity, And I heard that, and I remember saying, okay, God, you're right. And I threw it in the trash. And I walked out of there, and I've never touched nicotine since.
Wow.
That's what the Spirit does.
Yeah.
And I was in the fetal position crying for 48 to 60 hours after that from withdrawal. But he helped me through that, and I still have cravings, but I just have to elevate him as Lord.
Yeah.
But long story short, that was the process of my transformation. Now going on to how I knew I was a different person. I was working at Top Golf, and people just naturally in their fallen state are selfish. They don't really care. If they're pressed on it, they don't really love people. They just don't. They can say they do, but when it comes down to it, a train is coming. There's a stranger on the tracks, tied down, and you're on the tracks. You're getting out of the way.
Yeah.
So the first time I noticed that I actually had a love for another person that I didn't know was a lady complained about her food, that I was her server. She complained about her food, and my normal response under my breath was just like, F you, find a problem.
Yeah.
I'm not the cook. I can't help that your chicken isn't to your perfect American satisfaction, some smart comment. Well, when she complained about the food, I immediately felt a compassion and a conviction to do whatever it takes to make sure that she had good food. Mm-hmm. And I stopped in my tracks, and I was like, why do you care? And that moment, I was like, I'm being changed. Like, what happened to Kelsey is happening to me, and I don't care about, I've never met this lady. She's complaining, and not exactly in a nice manner either. And I'm like moved by compassion. I went all the way down to the first floor and complained to the kitchen and made them do it right, and waited down there to make sure that I received it in the correct manner. Took it to her with a smile, and I was like,
What?
I couldn't help but be compassionate and nice to her. Not me, like what he's done to me, you know? So yeah, that's my story. How are we doing on time? How long have we been streaming?
52 minutes.
Okay. You want to just, like, for another 10, 15 minutes, just kind of chat about what our hunting plans are?
Yeah.
Not to do such a harsh transition there. Like, hey, creator of the universe lives inside me. Transform my hard heart into a righteous soft heart.
No hunting.
So tree stands, they're for sale at Academy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if they are or not. Let's see. It is June 2nd. Is that right? It's June 2nd. It's a little early as far as like what I normally do tradition wise to put out cameras. I think you said last week July is kind of when you start everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Should. I'd say usually beginning August.
Is that should but never do?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
See, that surprises me because I'm usually so excited to get out into the field and hang cameras and scout and look for pass sign and do all that fun stuff like as soon as I can. So it surprises me that you put it off. But I will say, I've stopped hanging cameras as early as I used to. I used to hang cameras like third week of June, but I don't anymore just because there is no chance in the realistic world that any deer, unless you manage your property in the best way possible, that you're going to see any of those deer when you get in the tree. It's a totally different routine in the summer. It's a totally different habitat in the summer. Have you kind of had the same mentality?
Yeah. And I mean, we have thick deer population down here. So it's like there's lots of them. They bed in different spots at different times of the year.
Right.
They move in different ways, like you said. They have different patterns. They eat different things throughout the year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's been very few times that we've actually killed an animal that we have on camera. And then we have several cameras out. So it's telling you, like, most of the time you don't. I mean, you can see good ones and go after them. But chances are, most of the time you're going to get one you don't even have on camera.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a neighbor buck at 2:39 a.m.
Yeah, or he came from like 2 or 3 miles away.
Right. Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Honestly, dude, like, I don't, like 2 years ago, because I didn't hang cameras last year because, well, the move and everything. But usually when I hang cameras, I won't even honestly start to consider the pictures I get as valid until second or third week of October, just because I have had monster bucks on my camera. September 11th, 16th.
We talk about this all the time.
19th.
Yeah.
And then gone.
Yeah.
And you might see them during the rut, but most likely not. It seems like there's phases. It seems like, have you noticed that it seems like bucks are everywhere, like end of June, beginning of July, and then gone, and then they come back like first, second week of September. And when I say come back, when I say they're everywhere, I'm talking strictly seeing them on the road and on camera. They're just more visible. Seems to be like early September and then like late June, early July, and then suddenly, when I climb up in that tree, they all have smartphones and they know that I'm out there, and they're like, "It's time to bed."
Yeah.
No,
it's weird. And we've talked about this several times. It's like the last 4 or 5 years, I feel like every year from like, and our season opens September 15th. I feel like every year from like September 5th to like the 20th, you have like a couple of nice bucks that you basically pattern like every night or every other night. And it's like considerable like an hour before daylight or sunset, and it's like constant, and then just
Yeah, they just
they just
vanish.
disappear.
Yeah.
And you always tell yourself like, I'm getting out September 15th this
Yeah,
year,
yeah, yeah.
for a couple days. And it gets there and it's like 90 degrees and the mosquitoes will like carry
Yeah.
you out of the tree stand and
Brutal.
you're like,
That's why I
no
longer wear
no,
face
no.
paint. That is why I don't wear face paint early season. I wear, actually at all, I wear a face mask. Helps with
Yeah,
mosquitoes
I wear a
so
face
much.
mask 'cause
Not only
of
that, but
dang
like the
mosquitoes.
face mask or the face paint just takes so much like not like a lazy takes so much energy to do that.
just takes
but
more
like
time,
it takes more
and,
time.
yeah.
It like when it's super hot, it turns into water. You know,
Yeah.
if it's the liquid kind, or
Yeah.
no, actually, if it's the like makeup kind, it gets all
Mm-hmm.
slippery and stuff. I just think it's easier to just put on a camo
Yeah.
like super thin fitted mask.
Yeah.
It protects you from mosquitoes, the heat.
Mm-hmm.
You can breathe through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I what? Oh, sorry. But yeah, I'll probably put cameras out this year more like middle to end of August.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
not gonna waste my time with June and July does and fawns, and the 3:11 a.m. monster that is
Yeah.
a random that I'll never see again.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what would you say that your day one task is? Like, let's pretend tomorrow we're going to your property. What are we doing? And it's June 2nd. What would we do?
We have a bunch of old handmade stands that have like plywood floors in them, and like wood seats and stuff like that. A lot of those need to be replaced because they're just rotting out in spots.
Like tree stands or like homemade blinds or what?
Yeah, tree stands. Yeah, we don't have any blinds. Yeah, we have a bunch of tree stands around that my dad and his brothers all built, 20, 30 years ago. And they're heavy metal stands, but they have wooden floors and wooden seats. And a lot of those need to be replaced. Maintenance on stands, in terms of like checking all the straps, we always put that heavy number 9 gauge wire around the stand and the tree just in case the straps break.
Did I tell you that story?
Yeah, you told me
Okay,
about that.
just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. I will. Don't let me forget. We don't have time today, but don't let me forget to at some point tell that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Replace the straps.
Yeah, definitely check the straps. A lot of those bigger stands, why we like them is because they use chains.
Yeah.
And they use the booms on them and stuff. So, yeah, I think a lot of stand maintenance, trimming, and kind of like just building like paths for the deer to use. I feel like that's something that we haven't done much of, and that would like greatly benefit.
For
like,
sure.
Putting trails 30 yards away,
Yep.
25 yards away,
Like
clearing
actually
them out, maintaining
actually
them.
like making corridors.
Yeah,
and-
because they're always
yeah.
going to take the easiest way
yeah.
to go from point A to point B. So like doing that kind of stuff, I would say those are the main things now. It's way too early for food plots. If you wanted to do a watering hole, you can. I know we've talked about it, but it takes a lot of time and effort to do that.
Yeah, it
and
does.
the tanks aren't super
We
cheap.
should honestly.
I mean, we should. I know we need to.
Yeah.
And then we've also talked about going with each other filming hunts. So like going out there thinking about how that can work.
I just had
And
an
how
idea
we can make those kinds of things work out.
for a water hole. I just had an idea. It'd be the same manual labor and way cheaper. It wouldn't look quite as cool, but what if we dug a hole the same size as you would for the water trough, the 100-gallon horse trough or whatever? You dig the hole that deep, 2.5, 3 foot deep.
Yeah.
And how big are those normally? Like 5 foot long or whatever? You
I
dig
think
a
so.
hole that deep, and then instead of putting an expensive trough in there, just a thought I had, like you could buy like a 10-foot tarp and stick it in the hole and lay it down, and then overlap it up on the flat ground and put tent pegs in it. You don't want
That
it
may
like
work, yeah.
you don't want it like widespread because it might freak
Yeah,
the
yeah.
deer out if they stand on it.
Yeah.
But like if it's only out 3 or 4 inches, put a bunch of tent pegs in it, cover dirt and leaves over it so they can't feel it when they step on it.
It's worth an idea. Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna hold water.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I just was like, man, what's a cheaper option to do that, to make a watering hole? you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Those, I mean, the tanks aren't expensive, but they're like $90, $100, you know, so it's like not cheap to drop $100 just
Right.
on a tank that's going to sit in the ground forever.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
but lots of benefits would come from a watering hole. I
Yeah.
see guys having lots of success with their artificial watering holes that they make.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say if I went out right now and we went to like one of my properties, I would say honestly, I wouldn't take anything. I wouldn't bring anything. I would honestly want to just like walk through the woods and kind of just look around and observe what they did this last deer season.
Yeah.
Like let's establish their travel routes. Let's look
Yeah.
where it's beat down. Let's look for their trails. Let's find some rubs. Let's find where are they spending a lot of time. Maybe we're even walking through the woods and like we did that one day, we jumped those deer that were bedded. Okay, now we've established they like to bed here. You see what I'm saying? That's what I would do. And maybe even like I've done in the past, we have like this really good hill that I can I've just brought like a folding chair at the 200 acres. I've grabbed a folding chair, sat it underneath this tree, and it is in perfect view of like an entire half of the property because
nice.
you're so far above it and it's kind of down below.
Yeah.
And you can see forever. And I'll just sit there until dark with binoculars and just watch the deer travel and stuff. You can learn a lot from doing that, especially if you take notes. I did that back in 2018, 2019. But again, the problem is when you do that this time of year, you're gaining knowledge about general deer behavior, but you're not going to gain any knowledge on the deer that you're going to kill November 9th.
Yeah.
Because the deer you're going to see on June 15th, July 1st, July 18th are not going to be the deer that you see on November 5th. Anything can happen, but 95% of the time that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because a deer's summer habitat is not the same as a deer's fall habitat. Actually, I shouldn't say a deer. I should say a mature buck.
Yeah.
They're not spending the same time in the same places in the middle of July as they're in the middle of November.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it helps for me because my dad's either hunted the land or owned the land that we hunt on for 20, 30 years now. And he has an overall thought of where all deer bed, how they move
A lot of
on all the
experience.
properties because of all the experience. But even then, like, they change because people change the properties around you. You change your property.
People build a house on the
things
east
die,
side.
like
Yeah.
you might have a patch of acorn trees that are there, and then 10 years later they're not there. So they're not going to move through that area. They're going to move 100 yards or 200 yards away from that. But I always feel like that October, like 15th, October 30th time frame, I like to get out as much as possible because that's when all the young bucks are starting to kind of move, show signs of rut activity coming on.
Yep.
I mean, I've shot a couple in that time frame of pretty decent ones, but typically you're going to see your really young 1-2-year-olds moving in that time frame. And I like to take that as, okay, if they're moving there, the does are going to keep moving there. The bigger bucks will follow. They're just not quite as active yet. So I try and get out that time frame as much every single year to see how it's changed from year to year. And maybe you can adjust, where you have your stands or how you're going to hunt, how you're going to play the winds and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I try and hunt like as much as I possibly can for the like 2-week period. And then after that, like Jeff Sturgis will say, he's like, like save your best stands for when the winds are perfect. So like even if you don't get out as much, like make sure the times you go out you're making 100% full
Yeah.
advantage of it. And
Man.
I think that helps.
Oh, it definitely helps.
Yeah, yeah.
I killed the biggest buck of my life doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
I only hunted it when and it wasn't even honestly by like whitetail perfect standards, the perfect time to hunt it, meaning time of year. It was on October 11th, and I had an encounter with this buck 3 times before this, and I had established kind of, okay, he's living here because
yeah.
I've seen him every sit, and mature bucks don't every time you hunt they're not
Yeah.
moving that far, and I'm like, he is on this property for me to see him every time 3 days in a row. So the fourth time I went to a tree stand that I had not tried yet, where in a spot that I had experience, there it is again, that experience of deer traveling through and bedding about 100 yards from. So I had put a stand there years before that, and I'm like, I'm going to try that stand. It was the perfect wind for it. Everything was perfect. I typically don't like to hunt that until like pre-rut because it's so good, because there's so many deer in there. But I'm like, I know he's here. I'm going to risk it. And sure enough, I didn't see a single deer till 9 a.m. And at 9:30, he was the only deer I saw all day. He walked into the woods, bedded down. I watched him bedded there for 3.5 hours before he finally got up and came into range.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the perfect time to hunt matters way more than the perfect spot.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think to answer the question, I think now just a bunch of maintenance on tree stands, farms, just keeping up on stuff, because the more maintenance you do now through August, the less you have to do in September and October when they're starting to settle into their fall.
Yep.
Kind of.
Yeah, you don't want to go in there with a chainsaw on October 15th.
Yeah. The more you can stay out, the better. So, I think that's just kind of what, if we were to start getting out, focus on that kind of stuff.
So, before we end, I have a fun little game for you. Sometimes when I get bored in the tree stand, I like talk to myself and like, you just get bored. And one thing that I was doing is I was like, okay, Mylan, if someone were to ask you, make up your perfect, like heavenly day temperature, like make your meaning not temperature, meaning like if you were to pick a day without knowing what the weather would be like your best chance, if you were to pick a day and a time and a tree stand to be at this year, what day are you picking without knowing the weather? It's impossible to know that. Like if somebody was like, you only get one day to hunt this year, what's the date, morning or evening, and what stand? I'll go first. I would say October 30th. Morning hunt behind my grandma's house. There is a like strip of woods that's like 300 yards wide by 500 or 600 yards long, and it's right next to this ag field, and he rotates corn and beans. And it's actually the place I was hunting where I told the story last week about how I drew back on that buck 3 times. And well, that buck, that spot seems to be loaded the last 3-4 days of October into the first day or two of November. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
130s, 140s running everywhere on camera constantly for like that 5-7 day time span. I don't know what it is about that spot. They feel safe there. It's the least pressured. I'm the only one that hunts within like 600 to 800 acres of there, besides like one random rifle hunt. No pressure. I only really hunt it twice a year. So they feel safe there. They have food. They have cover, water. There's a pond right there. I would say end of October in that spot.
Yeah, I'd say any of the first 3 days of November. I've had years where, and I say that because the rattling in the evenings is so, calling them in is so good because they're not really rutting yet, but the big ones are starting to really move, kind of establish their dominance in the area.
Get kind of ticked
You
off.
know, yeah, like so anything they hear, they're like, like I'm gonna go check it out at least, even
Yeah.
if they're not the fighting type, they're gonna go check it out. And you get them in the evening, so they've been kind of laying down during the day, they've rested up. You wait until an hour before sunset, and you hit the horns together, and that buck's gonna just like freak out. He's gonna lose his mind, and it works. The reason I say more into November, I've had a lot of times where more so late October, you just get those younger bucks because the bigger bucks are not quite coming. They're moving, they're just not quite coming to the horns yet. But no, those most exciting hunts are when you can rattle in a really nice one, and it's usually right after Halloween. Within just a couple days is when they're really fired up, moving, angry. Yeah, so that's the time of year, man. That's just like,
Yeah,
get me in a tree stand.
for sure. Oh yeah. So we both agree that
Oh, it's right around
last
Halloween.
few days of
Yeah,
October,
yeah.
first few days of November,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
week right there is magical.
Yep.
Yep.
And if you can just get a little ways away from a bedding spot, like, you're gonna have luck.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what you gotta find.
for sure.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think we're closing in on 2 hours, aren't we? Hour 13?
Yeah.
Oh, it seemed like a lot longer than that. Oh, I guess we started at 6:30, not 6. Cool. Well, our goal was to keep it like around an hour, so
Yeah.
sweet. Well, we will establish next live stream what we're talking about. So, if you were watching, thank you. It looks like my dad was commenting in there. And so he's going to come on eventually. He's a big turkey hunting guru, but he also knows a lot about everything archery. He's an archery geek.
Archery
That's not to say that he is
photographer.
the archery geek. There's an actual archery geek
Yeah.
on YouTube, but he is a archery geek. And so any bow questions that we have, any bow topics when it gets closer to bow season, or even this summer when we're shooting or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't apply because you're stupid and you have a crossbow. But for real archers,
Hey.
we can talk bows. Hey, I'm not going to
I
act
still
like
have
it's
a
not
compound.
efficient.
I still have a compound.
It's very
I
efficient.
shoot it.
No, honestly, a crossbow is extremely efficient, and that's what it's about. Like,
Yeah.
how can we kill the animal ethically? I would much rather see you with a crossbow kill it correctly than me and my fake testosterone miss from 45 yards and
I'll say the
wound the
last
deer.
compound I had, I was 5 for 5 with it.
Yeah, so I'll shut up. Yeah, so we'll see you guys on the next one.